Do you feel like your fills are boring, uncreative, and uninteresting? And you feel like you lack the know-how to break out of this and really create unique patterns on the kit on the fly? Well, if so, today's lesson is for you. There really is a single best thing that will transform your ability to craft cool, even never before heard fills on the drums, and I'm teaching it to you today, so that you're having fun creating musical, not boring fills that inspire you and all who hear them as you tap into your inner creativity you didn't even realize you had. You'll be doing all of this after working through a step-by-step exercise I'm teaching you today. This is going to be a lot of fun. You can do this. Hey, welcome to The Non-Glamorous Drummer. I'm so glad you're hanging out today. I help self-taught beginners know what to practice so they can nail songs and play with a band and become the drummer that people want to have in their band. And, a big part of nailing songs is playing fills well, and playing fills that aren't boring, playing fills that inspire you and make you feel like a good drummer. Like, yes, I'm doing this. I'm creating interesting, cool parts, and people enjoy having me in the band because of what I bring to the song. That's a really cool feeling, and I want you to get there. But it's hard when you feel like you lack talent, you feel like you lack natural ability to play interesting fills, and you feel like your fills are boring. Maybe you're playing too many notes because you're overcompensating. I've been there, playing too many notes and realizing that actually made the fill more boring. And so you're frustrated and you feel like you can't do it. Believe me, I've been there. I completely relate to this. And honestly, I'll tell you this, that playing interesting fills is not a talent-based thing. Yes, it seems like some people are naturally good at that, but that's because they've worked really hard at it. Any drummer out there who is really good at crafting really cool, unique parts, they've spent a lot of time working on it. And so you can learn it too. It's a learned skill. A student of mine was struggling with this recently, and I knew he was at a place in his playing where he was potentially able to craft really cool fills. Like, he was thinking of some cool ideas, but a lot of times they just wouldn't really come across the way he wanted them to, and his fills were kind of sloppy too. And so I knew there was a mental block somewhere. And what was really cool was, as we worked on this together and went back and forth on it, we kind of discovered this single thing we're talking about today, single best thing to make your fills more interesting. Here's what it is. The single best thing is space. Space is what will make your fills more interesting. Think about some of the best fills out there, or best even drum solos out there that we hear in popular music, like Kenny Aronoff's drum solo in Jack and Diane by John Cougar Mellencamp. So when you think about that whole drum solo, it's basically just a long extended fill that builds up into a big chorus. And there's so much space in that, especially starting out. He's playing kind of these sparse rhythms, and then they get a little bit busier, and then there's the triplet thing, go, 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 go. It kind of feels like falling down the stairs, tumbling into the big chorus. And it all makes sense because it's compelling rhythms. He's creating melody in what he's playing because of space. In other words, there are more notes not being played than being played, if you think about it that way. Another example is the In the Air Tonight fill. The classic Phil Collins song. We get to the big fill, everybody knows it. Think about that fill. It's got a whole bunch of space in it. Ba ba doom 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 boom ba. There's space between each of those two notes. Ba ba boom 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 boom. If we were to fill in the space, we'd end up with something like, let's say if I fill in the space with the bell, then that fill would become like that, which would feel a little more busy, right? But if you were to fill in all the spaces on the drums, you get the idea. It's just stupid, because then there's no more rhythm. There's no rhythm there if you fill in all the spaces. So you have to have the space in order to have something interesting and compelling. Or something like, a lot of times, the more space, the better. I'll play you some more examples as we go with this. But I think that's a big secret. The more space you can insert into your fills, the more interesting they often are, and the more melodic they feel. So let's get into the exercise. I'm going to give you some steps to do this. I'm not going to leave you hanging just with a nice sounding concept. We're going to get into some really practical steps where we're essentially going to play 4-note fills. Just 4-note fills. And so that's the challenge. There's going to be a whole bunch of space. So before we get into that, though, I want to give you something else really practical for you, and it's going to be a great way to really apply and use what we're talking about today. It's my 25 practical rock grooves and fills for the beginner drummer PDF e-guide. If you're new to the drums and you're just trying to get up and running and you're like, I just want to play songs, this guide is your resource because it gives you 25, actually more than that, grooves that you hear in 99% of pop rock songs. Same with the fills, a whole bunch of fills that are super common that just work all the time that you can take, learn, and use. So the guide is full of notation, but there's also play-along recordings. So even if you don't know notation, you can still learn these. You'll probably end up learning notation in the process. You'll have a whole bunch of fun with this. There's some great fills in there that you'll have a lot of fun playing that'll be really practical. And so that'll be a great resource alongside what we're doing today, which is teaching you how to be creative and thoughtful in how you craft your own fills. So I want to get you started with a bunch of fills already there, but I also want to teach you not just, I don't want to just give you a fish, I want to teach you how to fish, as the old Chinese proverb went. And so giving you two sides to this here. So be sure to go grab that guide. It's totally free in the description below. Let's get into our action steps. So 4-note fills, what we're going to do very first is set our metronome to 70 beats a minute. You can do this on your phone. Doesn't matter. Grab the Soundbrenner metronome app. If you don't have one, it's a great free one. Set your metronome to 70. You can set the subdivision to do 8th notes, which means instead of this right here is quarter notes at 70, I've got my metronome going in my ear. This would be quarter notes, which is very slow, kind of hard to play with if you're a beginner. But you can set your metronome to do 8th notes. So then it'll be doing that. And now decide which hand you want to do first for this exercise. I know I'm not even telling you yet what we're doing. Pick a hand. If your left hand's your weak hand, go ahead and start this with your right hand. You can come back to the left later. So let's say, okay, we're going to pick right hand. Step 2, play a 4-note, quarter note based fill on the beats around the kit. If that sounded like a mouthful, it'll totally make sense when you see me do it. So what I'm going to do is keep time, quarter note time with my left foot. You don't have to do that. This is just so that you're hearing what I'm hearing. I've got my metronome in my ear. My left foot here will be the metronome for your sake so you can hear where we're at. Here's what I want you to do. Play on every beat, but no more than every beat. That means we're playing 4 notes in the measure because it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Ridiculous, right? So simple, but a lot of us have a hard time with that because we want to play more. We end up rushing, and we can't relax and actually commit to something that's very sparse. So don't laugh at this. Do it. It's harder than you think. We're starting off really simple. So I'm going to count you off. That's what I'm going to do. If you have 3 toms, then great. You can go ba, do, do, dum. If not, that's fine. You can hit whatever. The point is not to hit certain things on the kit. The point is to play 1 note on each beat. 1, 2, 3, go. Just like that. Be listening. Am I rushing? Am I dragging? Is it tight? Again, you don't have to do it with the left foot. I'm doing that just to be your frame of reference, which you're going to need here in a moment. So step 3, do the same thing, but now play on the E's of the beat. So when we play and count 16th notes, if we have our quarter note here, we go 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and to count the 16ths. Or 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and to count the 8th notes. So we can count the 8th notes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we count the 16ths, which are twice as fast as 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and 4 E and like that. So when I say play on the E of the beat, that means we're playing on the 16th right after the beat, which is pretty weird. So listen to me do it and then feel free to play along. Remember, this is our beat. I'm giving you the beats on the hi-hats, so you're basically hearing my metronome. You don't have to do that. Just listen to your metronome and hit something every E. 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, and 4. It's weird. It's hard. If you can't do it at 70, that's fine. Slow it down to 60, 55. But get to where you're able to play these single sparse notes that are just out there naked in the right spot. This is critical to being able to create interesting fills. Trust me. Now, the next step might be a little bit easier. Step 4. Do the same thing on the ands. So the ands are a little easier. We're just playing halfway in between those quarter notes like this. Just like that. So that one's a little bit easier. But next, lastly, we'll repeat, but on the uhs. So remember, as we're counting it, 3 E and 4 E and 1 E and 2 E and 3 E and up, up. Make sure I'm not playing what I'm saying here. So the uhs land right before the beat. Again, about as weird as the E's. So here's how those might go. So, very challenging, but be patient with this and go a little slower if you need to. You can set your metronome to 8th notes so you've got more clicking in your ears. That's what I'm listening to. It's definitely easier than doing quarter notes. But now for our final step, step 6, switch hands. So do this with your left hand, or do it with both hands, doing flams like this. Or mix in the kick drum. You could do it just with a kick drum. Like, let's say we're doing the kick drum on the uhs. It might be something like this. Or let's say we're mixing it up. Obviously, you can get really weird and you can get really creative, but the point is to teach your limbs to play on these weird parts of the beat with no help. You know, when you're sitting here and you're playing a groove like, we could add in some syncopated snare notes and we have the help, the safety net of our timekeeping hand and our anchor down here of our right foot. So we could go. That's not really that difficult to start to integrate, even as a total beginner. But when you're playing on these offbeats just out there in space, where you're going, oh, what? Where it's just way sparse and it's like just a single note out there in the wilderness, that's hard. It takes some practice, but that was a huge turning point in my playing, where once I was able to start doing that, suddenly I was able to start coming up with really unique things like... I know that just seems like total randomness, and it was. But when you can do that total sparse randomness, you can really create some interesting things. The point is, you have now taught your limbs, any one of your limbs, to play by itself on any part of the beat. That's what's a big deal here. That's why I want you to repeat back through those steps, doing this with any of the 4 limbs, including just with your left foot. And then with different combinations of the limbs and saying like, okay, left hand and right foot together, or right hand and left foot. And then just getting weird and mixing it all together and going and just switching back and forth and getting your brain to switch like that, because that means that any limb or any combination of limbs can play by itself on any part of the beat. What does that mean? That means you can play any kind of syncopation, any kind of rhythm, any kind of sparse melody on the drums, which means creating really interesting creative tom patterns, really creative, interesting fills, like some of those really bizarre ones I just played for you. You want to make sure it fits the song. That's a topic for another lesson, but the idea now is that you have the capability to do whatever you want. And that's a huge deal. So kind of a next step here, just a bonus step to throw at you. Think of a rhythm and then play it with 1 limb at a time. Take this and run with it. So just an idea here. Let's say you think of a rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, there's our rhythm. And then think, how many different ways can I play it? Maybe as you're working on left foot coordination, maybe you've got that going on. Maybe that rhythm becomes a tom pattern. Maybe it's a kick drum pattern. There's a million ways you can apply a rhythm. When you think of a rhythm and you say, I'm going to play it, you could either sit here and go, I don't even remember what the original rhythm was at this point. You can write it out if you want to, so that you actually have, here's the rhythm we're doing and you can stick to it. But the point is just to get creative and improvise, even if you forget the rhythm after a few minutes. You could do it with one hand, with the other hand, with a foot, or mix it into a groove and just think, how might I play this rhythm if I'm playing a rock groove? How might I play this rhythm if I'm playing a tom groove? What if I'm playing something really soft and chill? How might I play this rhythm? So, okay, again, if our rhythm is boom, 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 boom. You get the idea. You can get really creative with it. So for those of you who are kind of more intermediate, pushing toward advanced, there's a really cool bonus step for you to tackle that'll really help you apply this and begin really applying it to music. Sometimes that's the biggest step you can take, of just sitting down at the kit and saying, I'm going to make something up. I'm just going to make up something and play it and go for it. That's how you learn to improvise. It doesn't happen naturally. You got to make yourself do it. So here's what to expect as you practice these things. Your deep sense of inner time will get better, allowing you to be more creative with phrasing. You can also use metronome weaning to enhance this. I'll link a lesson below where we talk about that. The whole concept of using less and less metronome and getting to where you can play on sparse, weird, syncopated parts of the beat without a constant clicking in your ear, but still have good time. That's a big deal, and that's another next step for a more advanced drummer. And so we talk about that in another lesson on metronome weaning. I'll link that below. Also, your fills will become more rhythmic and melodic, and so way more interesting. You won't be always thinking, sometimes that's the right fill for the song, but it might not be. Maybe you need something more creative. And so you need to be able to reach for something else, because maybe it doesn't need every time. You need to be able to step out of that, and you will now be able to do it. Your fills will be way more interesting. And lastly, you'll realize you are capable of creative drumming. You just have to do it. And that is hugely encouraging and empowering. And so I want you to know that you can do that. You can get there. Question for you as you go. Do you need to get better at playing super sparse fills on weird parts of the beat? Or do you just need to challenge yourself to think of a rhythm and play it? Like maybe you're at a point in your playing where you can do those exercises, the 4-note fill exercises I went through. Maybe you need to practice using that and creating and improvising and getting things more locked in and in time. maybe that's where you're at. So I want you to think about that. And before you go, be sure to grab that 25 practical rock grooves and fills guide, especially if you're a beginner, especially if you're trying to just get up and running and play songs. This is kind of your cheat sheet for knowing the building blocks of basic rock, pop, drumming. You can take these, run with them, have a lot of fun. And so at this point, you've got a really great approach here to fills. You now know how to create interesting fills, how to use space in your playing. Plus, you got a bunch of free stuff I just throw at you there to, hey, learn these. You'll be very encouraged and empowered to just have fun playing songs when you learn those building blocks. So be sure to grab that guide. It's in the description below. Totally free, my gift to you. So have fun, take action. Know, as always, that you can do this. Stay unglamorous. I'll see you on the next lesson.